Hello, I'm Glen Corbett from Teagasc in Galway. I'm here today with Kenneth Keavey from Green Earth Organics in Corrandulla, and we're in one of Kenneth's 7 polytunnels. So I'm going to ask Kenneth, what do you grow in your polytunnels?
Hi Glenn, how's it going? Yeah, so we're just in one of the tunnels just at the start of March here. And what you can see behind me is just some young salad coming up, and we have this crop here, winter purslane, also known as miner's lettuce, very high in vitamin C actually, surprisingly enough, nearly the same vitamin C in that as there is in an orange. But yeah, so we use our tunnels, I suppose, for a couple of key things. One is to extend the season. So by the virtue of the fact we have tunnels, we have salad that's ready for harvest now in early March, and that's been grown through the winter. And there's also bits of rainbow chard and spinach in here. So it allows us to extend the season. That's a very important use of a tunnel. The first thing is to get crops out of season. You couldn't have this stuff outside, it wouldn't grow right now. So that's one thing. So we do that a lot, and they're kind of high value crops, so it's quite important. The second thing that we use the tunnels for, which you couldn't do without it, is we grow about 1,400 tomato plants here in the summer and cucumber plants. So you have to have tunnels for doing that. So the setup in here, all the wires and the irrigation, they're actually quite complex structures, tunnels. I mean, not only have they got the covering, but they've got supports, and they've got a timed irrigation. That's all by a central computerized controller in the packing shed. So that allows us to grow tomatoes and harvest tomatoes from July to September. So they're the kind of 2 key things and 2 key reasons why we have tunnels. Tomatoes are a high value crop, cucumbers are a high value crop. If you can't grow them in tunnels, you have to import them. And then salad in the winter is a high value crop as well. So they're key things that you couldn't do without tunnels, you know.
Great. And then I'm wondering, on a daily basis, what kind of tinding is needed for these crops in terms of the workload involved?
Okay, well that's a very good question, Glenn, because I suppose what we see out in the field is we'd have a lot of very specialized machinery. We have 2 tractors, etc. So a lot of the stuff we do in the field has the benefit of the element of scale. So once you've got scale, you can use tractors. So in here, things have to be done by hand. Now that's not to say it has to be hugely labor intensive. We have a 2-wheel tractor for turning over the soil. What you see behind you there, where that salad is grown through, that's actually a biodegradable foliar, so it's a plant-based. So that's used for disease suppression. All the watering is automated, so there's no requirement for for manual watering. The biggest thing, I suppose, is is weed control. But by the using stuff like the foliar there, we use a lot of wood chip in the paths. That has a double benefit. It suppresses weeds, but it also helps mycelium, these fungi, grow into the actual ground, and that then helps the plants. So there is more work involved in tunnels, but then there's also more yield, and there's higher value crops in the tunnels, you know.
Very good. Tell me, does the polytunnel take away some of the seasonal effects of growing crops, where there's demand? Can you supply all year round?
So yeah, I suppose one of the key things for us is to have greens in the winter, you know. So things like spinach is actually one of those things now that consumers are looking for. Spinach grows very well in the summer in the field, but in the winter you need to kind of have it indoors like this. One that we found good success with now is the ruby rainbow chard. You see all the different lovely colours there. So that's nice, again, is something different. And it just allows us to be able to harvest things in December and January when you wouldn't be able to do it otherwise. So that's your salads and your spinaches and all that sort of stuff.
So Kenneth, just a simple question I'd have, and I get it. Is it difficult to grow crops organically?
Okay, so I suppose the simple answer is no, it's not. You know, it all depends on the scale then as well, Glenn. Like, and when we're talking about crops, I can only speak from my experience, which is crops of vegetables. Now, we started off on 1/4 of an acre, and we've gone from 1/4 of an acre to a 40-acre farm with 20 acres under production, you know. So and I didn't have any particular experience in either farming or vegetable growing, so I guess, you know, it can be done. Like, and if you think back as well, like back to our parents or our grandparents' day, you know, I guess the thing is that you know, we were all used to growing vegetables in our gardens, and we didn't need to have a reliance on chemicals and even artificial fertilizer inputs are a relatively new thing when it comes to gardening, you know. So from a farming perspective though, it's a little bit different. When you move from the market garden level to a commercial vegetable production scale, then there's quite a big steep learning curve, and there's key bits of equipment, and there's a skill set there that takes time to develop, like any skill set, you know. So it does take time. Is it impossible? No. Is there opportunity there? Yes.
Okay, so really good. So the next question that kind of leads on from that, Kenneth, is what inputs do you use from a fertilizer? Is there anything that you bring into your farm as an input to grow your crops?
Okay, so a good question, and I suppose that goes back to your early question in relation to, one of the benefits of organics, and the key thing around that is fertility. So a key step in any organic system is the fertility building stage, so it's your crop rotation. So we'd have a 2-year generally stopgap where you grow red clover to enhance the fertility of the soil. When you look at the soil, you see it. The soil structure is better, the earthworm activity is better, and it's fixing nitrogen. So that's a very, very important one. The inputs we bring in then, of course, we bring in a lot of inputs. We use pelleted chicken manure as our main source of organic nitrogen that we bring in, NPK as well. So, and then during the winter we'd have a very tight spraying regime for brassicas, and that's more like a tonic. We spray things like Epsom salts, which still happens in conventional farming, as well as magnesium sulfate. We spray seaweed, and we do that at a 10-day regimen, so to try and reduce disease, but also to enhance the health of the plants. So it's kind of a fertility input as well in a way.
Very good. So I suppose the next thing I might ask there is in terms of the organic market in Ireland. Is it a large market? How do you see it? Is there a demand for your products, I suppose I'm asking?
So yeah, so that's the $1 million question, I suppose, about the market and where's the market going. So I guess over the last 2 years the market has changed, and it's unrecognizable to what it was pre-pandemic, you know. So there was a huge move by consumers to focus on local food, you know, which was a great thing for people grown locally like ourselves here. And now that the pandemic is on the way out, people are starting to revert to what they were doing pre-pandemic again. So the organic sector has experienced massive growth over the last 2 years. Whether that will continue into the future, you'd have to think that it is going to be an important aspect, because from the perspective of climate change and the focus on sustainability and the environment, both from a governmental and a policy perspective and a consumer perspective, it's key. And one of the key things you're starting to hear about at the moment now is food security. And how can you determine what's the best way to have food security is to grow your own food and growing our own vegetables. I mean, it's in our heritage to do that.
Yeah, that's very impressive. Kenneth, the last question I have in this section, I suppose most people this afternoon on our webinar mightn't be organic. They might be considering the new organic farming scheme, which is open at the moment for new entrants. So just a quick one, how have you benefited from the organic scheme that you're in with the Department of Agriculture since you joined it?
So I suppose there's always the schemes and the grant aid, so everybody's interested in grant aid, you know. I mean, I think any business should be sustainable in its own right, irrespective of whether you get grant aid or not. That's very difficult, and I know there's a lot of farmers out there today that might feel a little bit disgruntled with that comment. And that's no reflection on the farmers. It's the system that we're trying to operate in, where food prices are devalued, and hence you need grant support to enable you to actually make a profit through farming. That's wrong. The whole system is wrong. But how have I benefited? I mean, there is grant aid there. You get grant per area, so there's a contribution there that the government makes to help make the farming profitable. So that's important. But the big thing for us, I suppose, in the early stages was the capital investment that helped us to acquire machinery that we wouldn't have been able to afford otherwise, you know. Yeah. And just yesterday, I was on to a girl who's helping form what kind of, you know, the policy around what machines should be within the grant aid and certain key things, especially for a specialised enterprise such as vegetable growing. It just enables you to get equipment you probably wouldn't consider if you didn't have the grant aid there. Plus, I have to add, actually, we put solar panels on our packing shed there, and we got grant aid on those from the Department of Agriculture. Something a lot of farmers who have cow sheds, etc., should be considering, I think, especially with the price of electricity today. And you can get that grant aid, so go for that. Please do.